I'm Dennis Smith, and I'm here today to share with you my process for creating a watercolor painting of the Jenckes General Store in Douglas, Massachusetts. Hope you enjoy the trip. First, a note on my workspace. My studio isn't available, so I am working from a dining room table, and my painting will be taped down to a plastic tablecloth. The plastic bags contain my extra paints, about 30 colors that I don't have in my palette. I used several photographs and combined them in Photoshop to get the composition that I wanted to work from. I then had Photoshop trace the edges and I printed that out. Next, I taped that to the back of my 90-pound Arches watercolor paper. I then taped that to a very brightly lit window, and as you can see, the image came through fine. And this is the final sketch that I'll be working from. I decided to focus the video on my painting rather than my palette, but if you stop the video here, you can see what colors I am using. I have many brushes I carry around with me, but for this painting I probably only used the half dozen on the left. The next step is to finish preparing the sketch. Because of the white building with the shadows shown from the siding and other faint features, I decided that I would use the pencil as part of the finished painting. I'm using a kneaded eraser a lot. So for the next few minutes, I'm reinforcing the sketch. The pencil with the purple tape on it is an HB pencil. Please enjoy. At this point, I took a break for a half hour or so to rest my eyes and hands and came back at it. And now on to the painting. I'll start with the sky. I first wet part of the sky and then go back in with a blend of blues to give the sky a non-uniform blue color. Although in my source photo the sky is gray, I just couldn't bring myself to do that. For the trees, I use a combination of shadow green, hooker green, and phthalo green. I'll also mix in some yellows and grays depending on where I'm working, and even occasionally some reds sometimes to dull the greens down. Some watercolor painters don't blot, but I do often. I also use my fingers. At this point, there is enough wet paint all over the picture that I wanted to let it dry completely before I proceeded. And it's nice to take a break for a cup of tea, too. Next, I'm using a 2H pencil and drawing in the lines for the siding and some of the other detail features that show up only faintly on the photograph and in the finished painting. While some purists might try to do these shingle lines or siding lines with watercolor, I find that's much too fussy for my taste, and the pencil works just fine. The occasional color shifts are in the video are because I'm painting with natural light, and today of all days the sun is occasionally going behind a cloud. And it's time for another break and to let everything dry thoroughly before I proceed. Oops. I fussed a lot with the black windows. What it felt like to me is if I made them as black as in the photograph, they looked odd. Yet if they were too light, they looked odd, so I went back and forth a lot. I decided that the siding on the building didn't work very well, just letting the white of the watercolor paper show through. So I was fussing around trying to find a color that was light enough and the right shade of bluish gray. I always experiment with this on little papers on the sides, and that's what I was doing here. And it's drying time again, so I will take a break. Now I'm adding the planters and a touch of plant color, which I saw in some picture of this building, and I thought it looked nice and helped break up the front. Working with the highlights of the edges of shingles on the ceiling and then with the shadows on the building. Time for another break and to let everything dry. So now I'm using a gold metallic paint for the top of the light pole and also for the Greeked out lettering on the store sign. I decided to use white gouache for the white highlighting. This paint was pretty old and it was a little thick. Eventually I abandoned this and went with my white gel pen, as you'll see in a few minutes. More mixing of light grays for shadows. And another break to let everything dry thoroughly before I move on. So now we're getting towards the end of this painting. What I'm mainly doing is adjusting details, adjusting values, fixing things that I see. I'll then go off, stop for a while, go off and do other things and come back and stare at the painting every now and then for a few minutes, then go off and do other things and eventually come back to paint. This is a white gel pen where I am putting in white highlights and details and fixing up some things that were supposed to be white and had been painted over. Here I've brought in a black pen to adjust some of the edges and square out some of the corners on the black areas of the paintings, mainly around the window. I usually use a gel pen for this, but I had lost it, found it in a few minutes, and we'll switch over to that. I often end up adjusting the values of the greens all the way through the painting and at the end in order to get lights against darks and to get the shadings I want. It always surprises me, but the coloring in the building, the street, the sidewalks, etc., does impact what colors of greens I feel I need to use in order to make it look right. And another break to let the painting dry and to walk back and forth for a while and think about what else I need to finish. And that, as they say, is a wrap. I think this is done for now. If this were one of my normal paintings, I might set it up on the mantle for a few weeks, go back and play with things again, but that won't be part of this video. And here is the finished painting. And the finished painting in a digital matte and frame. I always think they look so much better in a matte. I had fun doing this and hope you enjoyed watching along. Take care.